In a completely different world from the one we know, the full moon illuminates the top of a well-known palace in the region. Inside the building, a certain person sleeps peacefully yet unconcerned, unaware of what awaits them. Unexpectedly, a man appears standing beside this person, who at that moment could not defend themselves. The intruder laments the state of that person and, placing his hands on their forehead, questions if this is how the boy greets his brother after 10 years. A few moments later, a noise is heard in the room, telling someone to check if the man is dead, and others shout they understood the message. With a kick to the door, some warriors break into the person's quarters and quickly enter to check on them. Armed and masked to hide their identities, they are surprised and question the identity of the boy standing in the room. In this case, the boy scolds them for entering the successor's room so unceremoniously. He then touches his brother's face, reiterating what he said years ago, that a person in power cannot be so soft with their subordinates. In this situation, all the soldiers surround the intruder, pointing their weapons at him, saying this is not a place one can simply enter. The man, however, turns around annoyed, saying he could say the same to them. With a simple gesture of moving his left hand, he closes the hall doors and questions how they dared to dirty the successor's room with their filthy feet. Soon his eyes begin to glow, emitting an extremely powerful blue electric energy that envelops the boy's entire body. Without wasting time, he extends his hands and unleashes all that accumulated energy in his ability called Lightning God. In an instant, all those warriors are struck by the electric energy, their bodies frying in pain and agony. Thus, all those hit turn to dust, dissolving into the air like simple smoke, leaving the last one spared extremely frightened. Looking at the current situation of his comrades, he couldn't believe what was happening before him. However, without time to react, the boy who exterminated his group appeared behind him, starting to control him with his strange powers. Using his telepathic abilities to lift the soldier off the ground and disarm him, he is questioned about who ordered them to kill his brother. Thus, the true intentions of the soldiers are revealed, but he asserts that he will never name his boss. Obviously, the boy was already well aware of the assassin's conduct and stated that in any case, he would not spare him even if his question was answered. At that moment, the assassin had only a few seconds of life left, so to avoid dying with doubt, he questioned the identity of that man. In this case, the boy promptly identified himself as the older brother of the man they had just assassinated. This information left the warrior extremely shocked because in his mind, the first son of Hyuk Mujo should have been dead a long time ago. Even in such a complicated situation, the assassin still had the audacity to say something like that in front of the boy, so he decided to finish him off. The boy's lighting abilities are the most surprising, as with electricity alone he can vaporize a body. Finally, after sending the assassin to the afterlife, the eldest son of Hyuk Mujo warned that he shouldn't have left him living as a dead person. And with the ashes of the bodies passing before his eyes, the boy just laments looking to the horizon because despite everything, this corrupt world brought him back. 20 years ago, the great Orthodox and Unorthodox War divided all martial artists into sides. This immense war ended in the victory of the demonic cult leader Hyuk Mujo. Thus began the era of the demonic cult's domination, and the Orthodox faction hid in the shadows, waiting for their return to power. Meanwhile, the Unorthodox faction was busier with their attempt to take the land for themselves. In the present, in one of the most relevant cities in the region, the sun shines on the rooftops, blessing the citizens with a very pleasant day. Among the people walking through the village corridors, one in particular drew the attention of all the men she passed. This was a very beautiful girl who displayed an authentic kindness in herself, and at this moment she was looking for something. After a certain smell reached her nose, she understood it was exactly what she had been looking for all this time. Starving, the girl finally finds a restaurant where she can have lunch, which apparently is serving good food. While the boy from earlier leaves the establishment holding a lunchbox, the girl enters quite excited to have her meal. Upon reaching the owner, she asks if this is the famous place that sells the real dumplings, to which the chef boasts and affirms that she is correct. Thus, she raises her voice and orders a plate of these dumplings, which scares the manager of the establishment. Despite the visible excitement in his customer's eyes, the owner informs her that they are out of stock at the moment, which leaves her quite confused. Soon reality hits her, and the girl loses all of her sparkle because without her dumplings, nothing else makes sense. Desperate, she grabs the man's pants, and while dragging herself on the floor, begs for just one, but the chef was not trying to deceive her when he informed her they were out of stock. To better illustrate, the establishment's owner mentioned that the last customer had just bought all the remaining dumplings. In this case, to cheer the girl up again, he comments that there might be a possibility of that man selling one of his dumplings to her. With this, she becomes filled with enthusiasm and instantly runs after the boy who bought all the dumplings from the shop to try one of them. Despite the embarrassments the establishment's owner had to endure, he still praised the beauty of the customer as she left. However, returning to his work, he believes this is not a good world to be so easily noticed, and meanwhile, that boy leaves with the dumplings. After running a lot, the beautiful young lady manages to catch up with the shop's customer, who bought all the delicious dumplings. She, however, is extremely tired and questions how the boy can walk so fast, also asking if he is using some footwork technique. In any case, the man asks what the girl wants with him, and she points to the bag he is holding, asking if they are real dumplings. The warrior doesn't quite understand where the girl is getting at, so she excitedly talks about the real dumplings, which are the best in the city. The boy says he doesn't believe it's as special as it's being said. In this case, the girl questions why he bought so many. She says that due to the quantity, she thought he was also a lover of dumplings, but this heap of complaints starts to irritate the warrior. Then the girl gets straight to the main point and asks if the boy could sell her at least one of the dumplings, to which he questions the reason for wanting to do that. With no choice, the young lady informs that she will pay double or perhaps even quintuple to taste one of these culinary masterpieces. Smiling, she says that the boy may not understand, but her dream remains to one day eat the real dumplings from that establishment. Suddenly, behind the girl, the warrior sees three people extremely conflicting with his current well-being. This is the group of the lone fox, who apparently are looking for Hyuk Mujo's eldest son. In this case, the girl continues to talk about her dream of eating those dumplings, and just when she was about to offer and exchange a more suitable meal, she was pulled by the warrior's hands into a hidden alley, creating in her mind a romantic atmosphere between the two. This atmosphere intensified even more when she looked directly into the eyes of the shop's customer. Despite this, due to her anxiety, she becomes extremely frightened and ends up punching the warrior in the face while questioning why he pulled her. Despite being punched in the face, the boy was only impressed with the girl's strength, who at that moment tried to apologize as much as possible. The warrior, however, believes there are more important things to deal with at the moment, like staying quiet to avoid being discovered. After that, a girl passes by the young lady and observes that group of soldiers from earlier, understanding that apparently the lone fox is still alive. And even with the most wrong context possible, the girl starts to look at the warrior appreciatively through her eyes and his beauty. In this case, the boy hurriedly pulls the young lady along, knowing that something bad will happen with the lone fox's presence in the city. Soon he lets go of her hand and starts to disappear in electricity, leaving the young lady completely disoriented. With this, she ended up tasting the bitter taste of defeat because despite trying everything, she still couldn't get even one of the real dumplings. Shortly after that interaction, in another setting, a hawk flies through the vast blue of the clear sky in the region. The hawk, however, flies over a group of three people where the boy is the leader and one of his subordinates questions if they really should do what is proposed. He continues saying that this kind of violence will draw everyone's attention, and that the moment the leader's identity is revealed, everyone will go after him. With this, the group's leader questions if his subordinate is scared about that. At this moment, the second disciple teases the first for showing a cowardly attitude in front of everyone. Putting the jokes aside, Hyuk Mujo's eldest son asserts that Hwanya is interpreting the situation completely wrong. Hwanya, however, doesn't understand what his master is trying to say, but his leader soon recalls his talk about it being dangerous for him. With this, Hwanya finally realizes he was disrespectful to his boss when he doubted his abilities. However, the leader asked his subordinate to track down a very peculiar organization called Moonwave, which left him confused and made him question further. In this case, the second subordinate completed the mission objectives to explain to his colleague, saying that he should find the group and kill them all. The leader, however, denied the part about killing them, which left the boy quite embarrassed. With that, the warrior puts his thumb and middle finger in his mouth and whistles, calling for his beloved falcon. The name of this falcon is Dark Wind, and he is requested to provide all necessary support and help for the boss's two colleagues. Thus, the falcon is released and begins to fly through that region, which unexpectedly is at the same height level as the clouds. The next day, the city's businesses were running smoothly as expected, and among the buildings stood out a large palace that was very bright in one of the rooms. That's because someone there was taking their nightly bath already nearing its end as they began to choose their clothes. This person was the young lady from before, who with a wrapped cloth makes it her bra by wrapping it around her bust. Next, the girl takes one of her coats to complement her outfit and puts it on. She also uses a sash to tie the center of her kimono. Thus, she ties her hair into a bun and finally gets ready to proceed with her commitments awaiting her. With that, she gives a determined look and firmly tells her master that she will start her mission. Thus, the girl heads to a certain mysterious building with immense iron gates in an extremely mountainous region. The Illusion Academy is an institute made for the elite, built by the demonic cult after the Great Orthodox and Unorthodox War. It was created to nurture and organize talented individuals from the fallen Orthodox forces, receiving new students every 3 years. However, support for Orthodox martial artists has increased unlike in the early years. Nevertheless, this academy has become a place where Orthodox martial artists could wash their identity and become members of the demonic cult. On this particular day, a line was formed in front of the Illusion Academy's gate because everyone was very excited to take advantage of this unique opportunity. One of the candidates introduces himself as Bai Seal and mentions using twin blades. He also says he has no affiliation despite having a master named Bayok Sagan. This is the girl from before who finally tells the staff member she's a man, somewhat suspiciously because she doesn't know how to lie well. With this, the girl begins to feel anxious, wondering if the man discovered her disguise, so she asks what is wrong because despite being feminine, she is still a man. The staff member in turn questions if Bai Seal is trying to pose to look prettier than he is, which leaves the girl quite confused. In this case, the man points his brush at the candidate, saying irritably that this is not an audition for actors, so a martial artist just needs to be good at martial arts. He becomes very annoyed by the candidate trying to win him over by appearing beautiful, and Bai, in turn, relieved, apologizes for what she did. Soon she finally sets foot in the academy and prides herself on finally being there in this place she dreams so much of. However, looking to her right, she notices a rather strange line and wonders why everyone is gathering there. Anyway, she believes she must try to blend in as best as possible since most people there belong to the demonic cult. Among the candidates, she notices the presence of someone familiar, the boy from before who refused to share one of his dumplings. With this, she wonders why they have to be on the same team and starts trying to hide her face so he doesn't recognize her. However, she understands that the man might recognize her and tell everyone she's a woman, shattering her dream. As expected, the hero calls out to Bai Seal, currently living her worst nightmare. Turning around, it was exactly as she had imagined. The boy was there, staring at her with a serious look. In this case, trembling with fear, the girl could only think she was in a dead end. Earlier at the temple, the protagonist arrived, but with a terrible impression, smelling something utterly rotten and corrupted. However, he had no choice but to step there if he wanted to track down the source of the foul smell. Nonetheless, when he encountered the first line, he didn't expect to find so many damned losers around. But among the losers who decided to ally with the demonic cult, while thinking most of them were low IQ children, he spotted that girl. This only made the boy even more irritated because she seemed like someone who had never fought in her entire life. Finally, it's the protagonist's turn, who introduces himself as Hyuk Ryanwi, 23 years old, and when asked about his weapons, he claims to use several different ones. After hearing this, the staff member got quite annoyed that one of the candidates didn't even have a specialty to stand out, but everything changed when he looked directly at him. He was an extremely handsome man to him, which made him wonder why so many attractive guys were applying. In this case, the staff member wondered if he should simply let him in, while the protagonist waited patiently for the test results. In the end, the gates were opened for him, and on his way, the boy felt nostalgic for being in this place again after so long. Upon entering the palace, someone began organizing the recruits, reprimanding one who was spacing out too much from the others. The protagonist, in turn, just waited in the formation line with the other approved candidates until further instructions were given. But suddenly, something came to his mind, making him scared. It was the feeling of being watched by someone close to him. Thus, the hero began to search among the recruits to see if someone was following him, finally finding Bai Seal trying to blend in. This leads to the current events when the girl crossed eyes with a man who had denied her a dumpling before. At that moment, unable to stand being watched any longer, he approached the girl to confront her, and upon reaching her, stood firmly like a wall. With nothing else to do, Bai Seal responds to his call. In this case, the protagonist irritably asks why the candidate is staring at him so blatantly. Upon hearing this, the girl realizes unbelievably that she is not being recognized by the boy in front of her. With this, she just bows, apologizes, and makes up a story about coming from another country, so she didn't understand the local culture. However, these excuses are not enough for the hero, who irritably places his hands on the girl's shoulders. But as he attempts to make his move, the girl slowly adjusts her shoulder, and even while facing away from the protagonist, she manages to deflect it. In such a case, Hyuk wonders in his mind who would use someone as skilled as this boy to spy on him. However, he feels embarrassed when he catches the scent of the candidate's perfume, as it reminds him of the girl from before. Then, confident in his deduction, he points at Bai Seal, calling her the dumpling beggar, making her realize she has been caught in the lie. The hero mocks her for discovering her true identity, even if it was quite late, and she, in turn, asks for secrecy regarding her secret. Shifting focus, one of the warriors from the platform calls all the candidates to follow him while those two argue, insulting each other. Following that man, the recruits are directed to the dining hall, where they begin having their morning meal with plenty of abundance and variety. Among them, at the back of the hall, sits Hyuk, eating alone with less food and far less enthusiasm than the others with him. Suddenly, to break the monotony, Bai Seal arrives quite animated with her plate full of food and questions how the hero will have energy if he eats so little. Anyway, as she eats, she announces that she will treat the hero as her senior from now on, allowing him to order her to do anything. Promptly, she asserts that she will be the hands and feet of the protagonist, but in return, she asks that her secret be kept at all costs. Recapping the purpose of the request, Cook understands that the girl wants to be his subordinate during their graduation in exchange for keeping her secret identity. However, unexpectedly, the hero denies her request as he does not want to take on that kind of responsibility. In this case, Bai Seal gets quite irritated because the man isn't losing anything with this deal. So the protagonist states that he simply doesn't want to get involved with people he doesn't need to. As she quickly finishes eating her meal, she wonders what's wrong with the boy and asks him to wait for her to finish. However, the hero tells her not to follow him, which she immediately disrespects by following him with her plate of food in her hand. At one of the doors leading out of the dining hall, Hyuk sees his esteemed falcon currently working on its mission. With this, he thinks that things are going as planned and then tosses his plate to the girl, saying he'll leave it to her to handle. In this case, Bai Seal becomes extremely happy because this apparently means the boy is accepting her offer to keep her secret. However, at the moment the plate is handed over, the protagonist simply disappears without a trace in front of the girl. The hero, meanwhile, is already far from the dining hall and upon reaching a particular tree, asks for a report. From the top of that tree, one of his subordinates is there and informs his leader that they have already found everything about the moon wave. Hyuk is surprised by the good news, despite never assigning a mission he believed was impossible to complete. To be sure, the protagonist asks if he heard correctly what his subordinate said, and he affirms that he did. Thus, Hyuk feels proud that his mission was completed faster than expected. Anyway, the boy explains that they only had to rough up a few people, and the second subordinate reports that he didn't kill any of them as ordered. Changing the subject, Hwania asks why his boss doesn't infiltrate him into the academy as well, and the same questions what he will gain from doing so. In this case, the subordinate argues that his boss has encountered many irritating incidents during his stay alone at the academy, and it would be good to have someone to help. With this, the hero gives a slight smile because one of his own is saying the same as that strange girl. To explain, he asserts that he has already found someone useful to help with such matters. Moreover, he explains that if he joins him, Dalchu would have to be on his own. So Hwania questions who his master found useful at the academy. At this moment, being somewhat immature, Dalchu loses control, claiming to be much stronger than Hwania, and therefore not needing him for anything. After calming him down and resolving the misunderstanding, the boy questions whether this person is truly trustworthy, and Hyuk asks what he means by truly trustworthy. In this case, with a very serious look, the boy asks if there isn't a chance this person approached his master on purpose, making him think. In this context, the protagonist thinks about it and decides with a smile that it is wise to keep his enemy as close as possible. Later, in the demonic cult palace region, some bees were pollinating the garden flowers. The leader of the group of recruits asked them if they enjoyed the day's meal, to which they responded in formation that it was excellent. The staff member then proudly comments that his academy is famous for the food offered. However, he mentions that many will not gain the privilege of tasting it again. This makes the boys quite anxious, and the man, with a malicious smile, announces that the entrance exam will begin and those who fail will be immediately expelled. With this, after intimidating the newcomers, the staff member asks who wants to be the first to face their fate. Among the recruits, most are hesitant to volunteer first, wanting the experience of witnessing at least one exam conclusion. Anyway, the girl tells her master that she will take the test first and report back on what it's like. Hyuk, in turn, asks if she is so confident that she will pass, to which she responds affirmatively, stating she wouldn't have come this far if she didn't think she was capable. However, the protagonist warns that she likely won't be able to pass information after finishing the test. According to his analysis, he assumes that the guards will separate the candidates who pass from those who are still waiting. Something quite obvious, as it's a way to prevent cheaters from taking advantage of others. With this, everyone forms up, and that staff member from the reception continues giving instructions. At this moment, one of the bees passes in front of our hero's eyes and Bai Seal. Noticing this minimal hint of danger to her master, she quickly swats the fly away with her hands while scolding it for its actions. However, something catches the hero's attention about this bee. Anyway, the girl boasts, saying the bee thought she was a flower and questions if the entrance exam is really that difficult. Not only does she ask this, but another recruit does as well, to which the staff member promptly responds by telling him to try his luck and go first. In this case, the boy smiles and asks what kind of test they will have to pass. To illustrate to everyone, the staff member explains that it is something quite simple, essentially going to the warehouse and coming out with something from there. The boy, however, asks what he has to take out of the warehouse, which irritates the man, who scolds him for asking too many questions. In any case, the man throws the boy to be the first to take the test, as he has been testing his patience until now. Soon the boy falls in front of one of the immense and strong guards protecting the warehouse gate. Thus, the girl informs her master that they are already starting and asks what he thinks the boy will come out with. However, our hero decides to keep the suspense, leaving the girl to see for herself. Without wasting much time, the guard removes the wooden plank that locks the door, allowing the boy to enter the place to take the entrance exam. A few seconds after he enters the warehouse, the guard closes the door behind him, blocking all sunlight. In absolute darkness, totally devoid of light, the boy can no longer see anything. Therefore, the guard looks directly into the eyes of the staff member leading this exam, and they both understand what must be done without saying a word. Thus, the guard grips his metal weapon tightly and prepares to strike with all his might. Then he hits the warehouse gate with the tip of his weapon, creating a loud noise. More than the noise, this causes a tremendous tremor inside the warehouse, making the boy completely terrified. After the first attack, more and more attacks come without giving the boy a break, and quickly the bees start leaving their hive, driven away by the noise. Soon, the boy stops being confused by the shaking and the sounds to face an even crueler reality. Behind him, thousands of very angry African bees appear, eager to eliminate whoever disturbed their peace. In their view, this is the boy taking the entrance exam. Thus, he screams for his life and trembles with despair, but the warehouse guard continues to launch consecutive blows at the gate. Outside the test, all the recruits are extremely curious to know what is happening inside. One of them comments that the warehouse must be full of bees. In this case, the objective is likely to get something besides avoiding the bees. However, the girl still wonders what this something could be that no one describes exactly what it is. Finally, after many screams and pains, the guard removes the latch to get the boy out of there. He exits while being chased by hundreds or thousands of angry bees. Finally free from his pursuers, the staff member directing the mission asks what the boy brought from the warehouse. In this case, he says he brought something valuable that the bees were guarding and pulls out a considerable piece of honeycomb from a compartment. Apparently, the man is pleased with the boy's achievement, and the candidates begin to understand that, besides passing through the bees, they must get some honey. This conclusion is also shared by Seal, who asks her master if that's what they need to do. However, he asserts that it most likely isn't. A few seconds after the protagonist's conclusion, the staff member becomes quite irritated and informs the boy that he failed the test. The boy, with his face completely swollen from bee stings, questions why. Seal realizes that her master's conclusions were correct, and he explains that this wasn't a test for beekeepers. He then elaborates that the real opportunity only reveals itself if one passes the exam. Although the girl doesn't fully understand, she tries to pretend she does. Anyway, the hero asks the girl to come with him to a certain location, leaving her confused. With this, the staff member asks who will be the next volunteer. Huck offers to go first, followed by Seal. Despite being disappointed with the first recruit, the man is encouraged as there are still brave people willing to take the test even after seeing the previous one's condition. In any case, the protagonist declares he's tired of waiting, and Seal is simply following her master's actions. The man thinks he will enjoy seeing their perfect faces all messed up after the mission. Without further ado, the test begins with the hero, who quickly enters the warehouse and has the gate closed by the guard. The girl is a bit startled by the noise, but is more curious, believing that boy probably knows something about the exam. Soon, the test begins, and with the sound the guard makes by hitting the gate with his weapon, the bees are once again awakened to attack the intruder. Quickly, one of them starts to approach to attack the hero, followed by thousands of others. However, Huck is not an ordinary recruit, and using his electricity power, activates his ability called Divine Wind Armor. This causes his body to be completely covered by a vast array of lightning that fries anyone approaching his body within a certain distance. This also applies to the bees, which are automatically eliminated as they get close. The barrier envelops the protagonist, forming an extremely powerful aura. He then closes his eyes and distributes his energy to other areas, now directing it to his eyes. With this, he gains a variant of night vision and perceives that there is nothing in the hall besides the hives. However, upon paying closer attention, he notices it be quite different from the others with purple, glowing eyes. As it passes before his eyes, the hero is certain he has found the item needed to complete the entrance test. Watching the protagonist's test are all the next candidates and the girl, who remains hopeful for a good result. Shortly after entering, the test ends and the guard removes the latch from the door, allowing the hero to exit the warehouse. Unexpectedly, the boy emerges from the place with his head held high, surprising everyone who witnessed the scene. Huck, despite undergoing the same tests as the previous candidate, managed to leave the test completely unscathed. He then approaches the staff member in an intimidating manner, prompting the man to ask what the boy wants with him. However, the boy harbors no feelings of revenge and simply extends his hand to show what he retrieved from the warehouse. In this case, given that the boy fulfilled the challenge, the staff member allows him to proceed with the entrance exam, much to Seal's delight. Wasting no time, the test administrator calls the next candidate to the hall, which is the girl who was quite frightened by the man's shout. Regardless, she is ordered to enter the test, and within a few seconds, she finds herself in the same situation as the previous candidates in a dark and mysterious hall. The girl knows she needs to find something there, and from the first candidate's experience, she knows it's not the piece of honeycomb. With this, she wonders if there is something inside the hives other than the bees. However, she understands that this would be too obvious, and besides, it can't just be about fighting the bees. In this case, after thinking a bit, she realizes this is the Illusion Academy, an instruction facility created by the demonic cult. In this context, espionage, infiltration, and assassination are the most important duties of an unorthodox faction martial artist. It's said that an unorthodox martial artist must be capable of overcoming countless observing eyes. Additionally, they must be able to distinguish between what is real and what is false, even without being able to see anything. Thus, Seal activates an ability in her eyes that allows her to sense the environment more precisely, and she soon finds the purple-eyed bee that is different from the others. However, she knows she will inevitably be stung by the others the moment she decides to capture this bee. In any case, she knows this is the only way to complete the admission test as well as the serving master. With that, she believes she has no choice but to be faster than the bees and sprints with all her martial arts skills. Outside the warehouse, candidates await the result and a noise is heard by all, revealing some of the situations happening inside. A few seconds later, Seal breaks through the door, managing to exit just before being completely overwhelmed by the massive swarm of bees. Due to her speed, she starts rolling on the ground towards the test manager, who becomes quite frightened. After rolling for a while, she falls into a heroic crouch and extends her hand to the demonic cult official. Proudly, she keeps her right hand extended and flashes a small smile, unlike the man who is very scared as yet another candidate emerges unscathed. Wasting no more time, Bai Seal opens her hand and shows the bee she captured, asking if that was what needed to be captured. After a brief analysis, the official concludes that this candidate did everything correctly and moves her to the next phase. Faced with this, the man is confused because this squad was composed of people he thought would fail, but so far, 2 have already passed. Moreover, he feels quite resentful and envious that these 2 happen to be a handsome men from before. In a conversation between the heroes, the girl asks if she has proven her strength, and after being praised, she asks if the boy has accepted her offer. With this, the protagonist wonders in his mind if this girl is truly desperate to be his subordinate because everything is very suspicious. Shortly after the conversation ends, a scream is heard from inside the warehouse, and one of the candidates comes out, chased by bees, thus failing the test. Seeing this, the girl does not judge the boy who failed the test because she herself almost couldn't find the right thing. The hero then comments that no one else will pass. Bai Seal is intrigued by this, so the protagonist explains that the bee she found was the last remaining pass bee. He says that initially he checked and after accounting for it, discovered that inside the warehouse, there were a total of 10 pass bees. Thus, except for the one who brought it, he killed 8 of them, leaving only 2 remaining. Faced with this, the girl states that her master is a very cruel person, but he thinks it's hypocritical, considering she also killed. In this case, she denies having killed and explains that she only knocked them out because for Bai Seal, all lives are important. This irritated the protagonist a bit because this kind of behavior was responsible for the orthodox factions falling. But anyway, he informs that there are no more passes. In this context, the girl asks why her master did this, and Huck explains that he did it because he wanted to test his subordinates' skills. With crossed arms, he concludes by saying that he does not appreciate weaklings as subordinates. So the girl asks how strong she needs to be and claims that her loyalty is more valuable. However, the hero with a smug look says that most likely the strength of his subordinates will not interfere with her loyalty. In another region, the protagonist's subordinates are in a restaurant eating, but one of them is obviously eating much more than the other. Hwania, in turn, questions why Daochi is eating so much, resembling a bottomless pit, and asks if he doesn't get tired of it. The brute, however, comments that his colleague eats very little, and that's why he is so small and weak, something he doesn't want to be at all. Seeing this, the boy asserts that a person's size does not dictate who is the strongest because he says he uses his head and not everything can be resolved with brute force. Daochi, however, irritates him further by wanting to know why that is. Then the big guy sarcastically mocks his colleague's statement about being a smart person. With this, a fight was about to start, but tempers are quickly calmed when Hwania sees in front of him the reason they are there. Finally, the boys' targets were emerging from their hideouts, so they decided to leave the restaurant to follow them. After waiting for a long time, the bastard that the captain mentioned was within the boys' reach. Thus, even though he was a brute, Daoki understood his commitments. Soon, they set off towards the Fox group to complete the mission assigned to them. As they walk through the city, the day is quite bright with children playing in the streets and businesses running normally. The important figures pass through numerous trading networks and local establishments, continuing until dusk and the onset of twilight. The boys had executed their work precisely up to this point, reaching the location where the target's base was likely situated. Thus, they entered the place after checking and confirming it was clear. However, a cruel reality came to light just a few seconds later. Their entire journey to that region was nothing more than a trap they fell into, now surrounded by numerous heavily armed warriors. The two warriors cover each other as the ensuing battle will result in the complete destruction of one side. After deceiving those boys, the group from before finally speaks up, cursing the boys and saying they already knew they were being followed. Then he mocks the warriors who followed them there without even thinking once that they were being lured into a trap. In this case, Daochi calls Hwania stupid and the boy gets angry, elbowing his colleague. With that, the man known as the Fox and the mission's target orders his subordinate to deal with the bastards in front of him with all the necessary violence. Because they need to know who sent them, it is ordered that despite everything they be kept alive, so the guard promptly heads toward the first one. Prepared to punch Daochi in the face, the man questions how they dared to follow them and if the boy knows who they are. However, the boy was much stronger than expected, and with a simple punch, he intercepts the guard's blow and knocks him out. Thus, he throws him back completely knocked out and unable to continue the fight. With this, Hwania questions the intelligence of the man who claimed to have lured them there on purpose, knowing they were being followed. Because just as he did, the boys allowed themselves to be caught on purpose, trusting their abilities more than anything else. Without wasting time, the duel begins and Hwania pulls 3 thorns from his hand, throwing them forward, which ends up hitting their target's eyes. This is because the person in front of him was killed, with each thorn piercing a vital area of the human body. Logically, the guard falls to the ground directly to the afterlife, and the lone fox is extremely frightened by what he is seeing. Then more and more of his guards are defeated by those two boys who were initially supposed to be his prey but became his executioners. With this, the defeated fox on the ground asks who sent them to him, and Huanya, in turn, asks why he wants to know, seeing as he will die there anyway. That same afternoon, back in the quarters where the new recruits of the demon cult reside, the girl finishes yet another of the countless meals she had at dinner. With that, she praises the preparation of the food, and in light of this, the protagonist questions if she appeared there just to eat so uncontrollably. In this case, the girl comments that she couldn't even eat her lunch because of him, which was a tremendous waste. Moreover, she said that despite everything being good, the buns there were a disgrace compared to the real ones. Thus, the girl with a serious face asks if he liked the real buns, and unexpectedly, he states that he doesn't know, as he hasn't eaten them. This declaration makes the girl completely lose control, not knowing why Hep bought them in the first place, if not to eat. The hero, in turn, states that he just did what he wanted. But at this moment, someone calls them, interrupting this extremely important conversation for Bai Seol. Suddenly, two unknown warriors appear, and one of them comments that since they've never seen their faces there, they must be newcomers. With that, the man warns that this table is the place for veterans, which is why it was empty in the first place. With this, the hero understands that the warriors are being territorial, and one of them, while waiting for the table to be cleared, questions why he's being stared at. Anyway, the girl apologizes to her veterans, saying it's her first day there, which makes the warrior calm down and ask where they are from. Bai Seol, although a bit uncomfortable, states she is from the Orthodox faction, which negatively catches the warrior's attention. However, she continues introducing her master, who, unlike her, comes from the demon cult, and little by little, the veteran's expressions begin to worsen. Even though she tried to do things differently this time, the girl knew what that look meant, and it wasn't just the warriors, because everyone in the place had the same expression. One of them, in turn, questions this Orthodox faction and mocks it because even after so much time has passed since the demon cult took over, there are still people in a place like this. In this case, he advises Bai Seol to give up being part of an Orthodox faction, and the others start laughing at the situation. However, among the tables, some people who are part of the Orthodox faction begin to tremble with anger for not being able to do anything about it. And now, knowing that the newcomer at their table was a bastard affiliated with such a place, the warrior begins to pour water. And this water starts falling directly on the top of the girl's head as punishment for being part of the Orthodox faction. However, he states that just once isn't enough, saying he will make sure to continue this treatment every day. As if this humiliation wasn't enough, the veterans claim they will do this personally and mockingly say there is no need to thank them. With this, the water starts to heat up and evaporate, and the girl, amidst all this stress, begins to think of her master, believing she can no longer hold back. But before she could do anything she would regret, the kettle suddenly went flying through the air and soon fell to the ground, spilling all the stored water. This was something that left the warriors completely confused and intrigued, but in front of them, the protagonist remains serious and simply says that the water is splashing. In this case, the warrior in a purple shirt asks if the hero is looking to pick a fight with him, and he does not deny it, being ready to defend his subordinate's honor. In this way, the warrior went after the protagonist to teach this newcomer who dared to challenge his veteran a lesson. However, as he approaches, he receives a simple kick with the tip of the foot to his shin, causing him to stop immediately. Soon he falls to his knees on the ground, not quite understanding what is happening to him. Chuck, however, remains extremely imposing, and while exuding his intimidating aura, he raises his foot to kick the boy. Without any remorse, he pressed his foot against the warrior's shoulders, making him groan in pain and scream. Even though Huck used only a small percentage of his strength, the veteran's knees buckled, and he began to collapse in agony. With his foot still on the warrior's shoulder, the hero redirected the man's attention to the topic they were discussing earlier. With a menacing look, the protagonist commanded the bully to clean up all the water that had spilled on the floor. Unexpectedly, despite being a seasoned warrior who had trained for many years, he couldn't move his body when pressured by a mere novice. In this case, he speculates that his acupressure point is being targeted, rendering him immobile. Soon, the fellow warrior noticed the state of his collie and began to get deeply irritated. He then questioned if the bastards who were eating quietly would just sit and watch without doing anything about it. In this case, everyone stood up to help their fellow faction member who was being assaulted by the newcomer. Within seconds, all the cult members were surrounding the protagonist, effectively trapping him. Seeing this, the girl pleaded with her master to stop as she didn't need to be defended. However, the hero continued to order the warriors to clean the water on the floor. At this moment, Hup pressed even harder with his foot on the bully's trapezius, causing him to scream in pain. However, this altercation drew the attention of another mysterious warrior who appeared, shouting for them to stop. He introduced himself along with 3 of his henchmen and asked what was happening with a kind smile that hid a lot of malice. Upon seeing this person in the restaurant, everyone already knew what it meant. He asked again, this time in a more intimidating manner. With that, the green-haired warrior explained that one of the newcomers was sitting in his place, so he decided to teach him a lesson. However, this didn't convince the boy, who continued to glare intimidatingly at the bully, making him quite scared. In any case, he began to draw conclusions from the situation, understanding that these idiots had tried to teach a lesson and ended up being embarrassed. In this case, the new blue-haired warrior commented that his friends seemed to have made a mistake, so he decided to apologize on the veteran's behalf. However, Huck didn't take this conversation very seriously, making the warrior's subordinates furious. But wisely, the blue-haired one stopped them and asked the boy if his apology was not enough to stop the aggressions. Saying this, the two stared at each other for a few seconds, while the protagonist decided whether to stop or not. After thinking for a bit, Huck stated that he just needed a clean shoe to settle things, thus not requiring an apology. With this, the warrior understood the demands and accepted without much trouble. However, he also called the green-haired veteran over for a talk, something the latter already knew would be worse than his own death due to his superior's intimidating gaze. Thus, he promptly grabbed a cloth and went to Huck's shoe to clean it as best as possible to meet demands. Seeing that his request was indeed being fulfilled, the hero stomped on the bully one last time before removing his foot from him. With that, he walked away and called by Seal to come along. However, before they could leave, the blue-haired warrior asked the protagonist's name, to which he responded, Chuck. In this case, the veteran reciprocated by introducing himself as Ujak. However, the hero simply ignored him and continued walking away, greatly irritating the warrior's subordinates. Bai Seal, however, understood that if the boy's name was Ujak, then he was probably from the Jew clan of Lightning Blood, which was quite surprising. It is said that the main forces of the demonic cult at the moment are the 4 great celestial clans and the 3 major sects. Thus, the Jew clan of Lightning Blood is one of the 4 great celestial clans. Therefore, the girl presumed that the warrior had significant influence within the academy. Seeing this, she believed it was probably unwise to make him an enemy so quickly. Juve in turn was happy because he knew this newcomer would make things within the academy more interesting than ever. However, this wasn't the case for the veteran who had challenged him and was humiliated by being forced to apologize. The purple-clad boy, despite being in great pain, tried to explain his actions and apologize. However, with a frightening look, Ju simply told him to come with him. Later in the training area of the demonic cult, the manager quickly appeared and ordered everyone to go to their quarters. When the main group arrives at their quarters, Bai Seal is the first to praise the place, finding it quite cool, unlike the hero. The protagonist, on the other hand, thinks that despite everything, the place is great for sneaking out at night since it's at the end of the building, and he compliments the girl as a good servant. At this moment, the girl thanks her master for what he did for her at the restaurant, but the hero remarks that it had nothing to do with her. He did it simply because he wanted to. Anyway, the protagonist explains that since they are in a room, they must have some rules, and Bai Seal promptly bows, saying she will obey them all. First, Feck establishes that he will be first in everything, whether it's taking a bath or going to the bathroom, and the girl unexpectedly agrees. Additionally, the hero informs her that he will occasionally have to go out at night, which his subordinate understands without any problems. She then excitedly comments that in this case, she will just need to cover for her master so that the staff doesn't find out. With this, Feck is pleased to see that his subordinate is quick to grasp things. Looking out the open window and spotting his falcon, the hero simply jumps out the window, announcing that what he mentioned about going out at night will start tonight, leaving Bai Seal completely surprised. In the middle of the night, in a forest in the cult's region, the 5-race sect is mentioned. Wanda comments that it became obvious they were being spied on, and they were taken to the main base, causing quite a scene there. Kek mentions he has never heard of this sect before, so his subordinate suggests they need to contact the moon to get more clues. In this case, the leader asks if Wanya discovered where the meeting place will be, and he only says that he will guide the protagonist there. Later, with the moon fully risen, the warriors finally arrive at the House of 10,000 Books, realizing it's a disguise for its true purpose. Upon entering, it indeed looks like a bookstore, and Dalchi comments that it doesn't smell good, which is obvious since it's not a restaurant. However, at that moment, a staff member appears saying that people actually call books food for the mind, and perhaps people figuratively consume them. Despite this, with his head down, he also mentions that considering their guests, they don't seem to be there for books, which Hike promptly confirms. Seated at a table, the man introduces himself as Siu Pyung and immediately states that they provide information based on what they're paid, deciding the price accordingly. With that, the hero asks if they can get straight to the negotiations, and the staff member agrees, asking what he wants to know. Without hesitation, the protagonist states that he wants information about the 5-race sects, so Sia begins looking through his book of information until he finds something. He then takes a folded piece of paper and places it on the table, saying he will make the information cheap since it's their first deal, costing 500 Nyangs. However, the price drives the protagonist's subordinate crazy, as 500 coins are a lot for a simple piece of paper, and Siu explains that it's not expensive. Nevertheless, the hero states that the information is probably not very good since it was already written and stored away, surprising the staff member. With that, the protagonist states he wants to know the truth behind the 5-race sect, saying he is sure the man knows much about it. In this case, Siu smiles, saying he thought the boy would be an easy customer and now charges 3,000 nyangs for the new information. The protagonist then asks, while rummaging in his coat, if the man also accepts objects instead of money, which is said to depend on the item. With this, Hook places a bright green stone on the table, surprising everyone as it's worth much more than the stated amount. After a thorough examination, Siu understands it to be a pearl the highest luminosity ever seen, so the hero requests that this be payment for future information. With a serious look, the protagonist now asks for information worth at least the 3,000 nyangs requested. The staff member quickly grabs a paper and starts writing something down. When he finishes, he hands it to the hero, who opens it to a surprise. The paper only contains the phrase 5 poisoned demons, something completely unexpected. This made the hero's subordinate very angry, questioning the value of 1,000 nyangs per word. Fearing for his life, Siu asked them to look at the first paper. In this case, upon reading, Wanya realizes that the group 5 poisoned demons is not mentioned there. It only states that the head of the sect is Macjong, which is false. Thus, the staff member agrees, leading to the conclusion that the 5 poisoned demons is the true leader of the 5-race sect. Finally, the hero asks if the man has more interesting information for him, but he responds that it takes time and especially a lot of money. In such a case, Cook says he is determined to know everything, regardless of the price. Later, at the palace within the demonic cult's grounds, a hero returns to his room through the same window he left from. However, upon entering his room, he encounters a rather intriguing reality. The girl was sleeping peacefully and everything in her room seemed normal. Thus, the protagonist went to his bed to see what was causing the lump under the blanket. After removing the blanket from his bed, he was quite satisfied to find that his new subordinate had even gone to the trouble of making a dummy for disguise. Feeling proud of Bai Seal while the girl slept, he mentally praised her effort. The next day, the atmosphere in the region is quite calm, and a bountiful meal is prepared for all the warriors. This is the entrance ceremony of the Illusion Academy, which always comes with such formalities and festivities. In this place, the staff member who organized the last mission test questions where that guy is, knowing it's almost time for the event to begin. Among the warriors participating in the ceremony, Bai Seal asks her master a question. She indignantly questions what kind of corrupt school demands that its new students prepare food for their seniors. Additionally, she comments on the Sky Squadron, which only members of the demonic cult can join. This is followed by the Earth Squadron, which is lower in rank, and finally the Human Squadron. In this context, she irritably questions why they are separated into such castes, even after passing the test to attend the same environment. Bai Seal believes this is clear discrimination against people from the Orthodox faction, going against the Academy's motto. However, the protagonist interrupts his subordinate's complaints to say that what is to come will be better than it used to be. When asked, he explains that the successor of the demonic cult has a great attachment to this academy, unlike before, when it was impossible to enter the Sky Squadron without being from the clan. However, now it is at least possible to enter the Earth Squadron by proving oneself, something that only happened due to the man's interference. Seeing this, the girl doesn't understand what to feel about it, but something else catches her attention. At this moment, the ceremony begins with a shout from someone welcoming the newcomers to the academy. Loud and clear, this person, whose voice is heard by all, claims to be Dan Novak, the vice principal of this institution. Faced with this, all the new students are quite confused, trying to figure out where the sound is coming from and why this is happening. The staff member directing the event, in turn, starts to get stressed because these actions of the vice principal happen frequently. Then, continuing the ceremony, several percussionists on the roof begin to beat their drums. The sound generated by the drums becomes part of the vice principal's presentation, who is seen by everyone as he jumps from the palace roof amidst a light show. He then lands with great style, raising a considerable amount of dust, and finally remains kneeling on the ground as cherry blossom petals are thrown. Seeing this, the hero's subordinate starts to think this man is a psychopath for planning such a flamboyant entrance. However, Huck does not leave room for mockery, already knowing that this man is someone incredible, known as the one-armed whirlwind Dan Novak. After his triumphant entry, the man comments that he already knows they have had some very talented individuals for this year's intake. Additionally, he generically tells everyone that they are the best among the best from the entire continent. Therefore, they can be proud of their achievements and who they are for having conquered something so significant. Soon, they will also become the future of Murim. With that, he raises his arms cheerfully and shouts that the entrance ceremony will finally begin. Little by little, all the students begin to move until they align around the table, holding the banquet. In front of their seniors, Bai Seal makes a respectful bow and states it is a pleasure to meet them. However, just as one of the seniors represented by the Earth Squadron is about to respond, he is pulled by the shoulder. At this moment, two high-ranking seniors from the Sky Squadron appear to interfere with the courtesy of the lower-ranking students. Among them is Ju, the man who mediated the earlier conflict in the dining hall, accompanied by a huge, mysterious, bald warrior. Ju, for his part, greets his junior and says he couldn't just pass by because he had promised to see him frequently. With this, the hero responds by concluding that because the man's minions showed themselves to be so weak last time, he has now brought new ones. This statement greatly irritates the bald man, who vents his anger by smashing one of the dishes on the table with a powerful punch. Seeing this, both the students and the organizers become intrigued by what is happening at the event. Thus, the admission test organizer gets angry at the bastard students ruining the ceremony, but the vice principal remains very calm. He comments that they should let things unfold naturally because, in his view, they are just building a friendship, which the organizer accepts without arguing. Taking the lead in the conversation, the blue-haired boy extends his hand, saying he will pour some drink for the newcomers. However, while pouring the drink into the cup, he doesn't stop even when it starts to overflow. Thus, in an overall view of things, it becomes clear what the bullies are trying to do. To prevent getting wet, the hero simply brings his hand close to the cup and flicks it, causing it to spill entirely onto the table. Finally, with a smug look, he states that his senior should try pouring again because in his last attempt, he spilled too much of the content. Faced with such defiance, the bald man raises his fist to start a fight, but Yu stops him before things get ugly. In the background, all the seniors start filling their newcomers' cups as part of a passage tradition, and the vice principal is already completely drunk. After the incident with the cup, Ju remains calm and says there is no point in causing more trouble. However, he keeps the hero's name in mind and states that today's action will make him regret it someday in the future. The protagonist responds on equal footing, not lowering his head. Finally, the seniors decide to leave, knowing this is not an appropriate time to cause a commotion. However, hidden behind one of the walls, a mysterious person was secretly observing the events of the ceremony. As dusk sets in, all the students drink together, both seniors and newcomers, except for the main group. Bai Seal remarks that it seems they are in trouble and that no one will approach them, making it seem like they are being intimidated. However, the hero sees it as beneficial. Despite her master's perspective, the girl is a very outgoing person and can't stand being isolated in a corner like this. In this case, she stands up, and when asked where she is going, she simply asks her master to wait. At this time in the afternoon, the wind begins to blow stronger, and the mysterious man continues his espionage from behind a wall. However, at this moment, Bai Seal appears with a smile on her face, leaving the man extremely scared. In parallel, while sitting at the ceremony table, the hero spots his messenger falcon in the sky. Back to the girl, she drags the spy to where they are sitting, saying there is plenty of drink for him, who at the moment doesn't know what to say. However, upon reaching the table where Hook should be, Bai Seal finds nothing but the cup that was previously spilled. Thus, she looks around for her master, but finds no trace of him. The protagonist, meanwhile, was at the House of 10,000 Books to get more information from the librarian and informant Seo. Upon reading a paper that was delivered to him, the boy discovers that the 5 poison demons is in his 50s and his main move is the 12 flamingo palms. It is also said that this warrior is proficient in poisonous arts and skilled in throwing blades. The 5 poison demons has killed more than 30 people with poison, most of whom were skilled in martial arts. He prefers assassination methods that leave no evidence behind and kill the target slowly. However, the most important information is that this man is currently disguised as a repeating student at the Illusion Academy. Back at the entrance ceremony banquet, the newcomers and seniors interact, creating a fun atmosphere. Despite this, one student continues to be somewhat intimidated by the higher-ranking students. Bai Seal doesn't understand what's happening and why that boy is being treated that way, so one of the students informs her that he's a repeating student. Back at the House of 10,000 Books, Huck questions whether the man's reason for not graduating is that he's purposely repeating. From this, the conclusion is that someone at the academy is supporting the 5 poison demons, and in return, they use the 5 raised sect as their assassins. In parallel, the girl questions the student who informed her about the boy's situation, wondering why it mattered that he couldn't graduate. In a gesture of respect, she states that despite everything, he is still her senior, so she decides she will serve him as much as possible. Faced with this, the man, though somewhat embarrassed, thanks her. When asked his name, he responds that he is Yang Wuseng. Despite appearing weak and clumsy, this is the person who killed Hyuk's brother and is now his primary target. With nightfall, our hero finally returns to his room to rest. However, the name of that man in his mind kept him from sleeping. At this moment, Bai Seal says that people should let more drinks spill because that is how friendships blossom. The girl is talking in her sleep and begins to recount the friendly conversation she had with the 5 poison demons at the ceremony. However, when she mentioned that the man she was talking to was a repeating student, the protagonist got up in shock. Thus, he woke the girl up without any empathy for her sleep since his concern for his brother was much greater. Slightly awake, she asks what the hero wants from her. He responds that he wants to know about the repeating student she spoke to. However, the girl still speaks incoherently due to her drowsiness. Regardless, she states that a senior she met at the ceremony was a repeating student, and Hyuk pressures her to say the student's name. After thinking for a bit, the two finally conclude that they are talking about the same person. With this, the hero recalls that Yang Wuseng was just a few meters away when he went to check his falcon's updates. Without wasting time, he gets up from the girl's bed, now transmitting a serious look along with immense bloodlust. The next day, the SECT palace of the demonic cult is graced with a beautiful day of clear skies, and amid this, the repeating student waters some of the garden flowers. At a certain moment, the protagonist appears, calling out to his friend, the admirer of golden flowers. Yang Wuseng is surprised that someone recognized the species of flowers, and Hek comments that he knows they come from Nammen and are therefore rare to see in Jogyuan. In this case, the student happily informs him that he has tended this garden for years, but he has never seen anyone with such a keen eye for flowers. With this, the boy invites the hero to his home for tea in a very respectful manner, and Hek promptly accepts. Having set aside formalities in their conversation about the flowers, the student remembers that he hasn't introduced himself and states his name is Yang Wuseng. Thus, the protagonist reciprocates by saying he is Hyuk, a new student at the institution. In another region, a candle burns, illuminating the interior of the House of 10,000 Books. Seo, along with the hero's subordinates, states that this warrior who rests in the afterlife was called Double Blade and was also assassinated by the 5 poison demons. Lowering the sheet slightly, the warrior's state was extremely pitiable. Hwanya comments, intrigued that he didn't know someone could die in such a way. The staff member explains that the poison makes the victim vomit blood until there is nothing left. Given this fact, the boy becomes quite thoughtful about the effects of the poison on the victims. Later in the day, in a nearby building, the hero enjoys a mint tea while having an important conversation. With the man who killed his brother, he affirms that it is exactly as he saw and thanks for the precious tea he is drinking. Yang doesn't care much about this because he would do anything to be friends with someone knowledgeable about flowers. Changing the subject, the protagonist tries to corner the boy by saying it is unexpected for someone from Illusion Academy to have a hobby related to gardening. However, he lightened the conversation by saying he didn't want to be rude. Yang didn't take it personally and admitted that he doesn't train enough to graduate. Regardless, curfew is approaching and Huck says goodbye, lamenting that he has to leave and save the tea for another time. The two then part ways respectfully, agreeing that they will definitely see each other again. Despite his calm facade, Huck leaves with his nerves on edge, thinking that the boy's stupid face is probably what makes his victims relax. After leaving the house, the protagonist walks alone through the forest, illuminated by fireflies. This is the path he takes to meet his subordinates, and when he finds them, he asks for their report. Summarizing everything they saw in the library, Hwania states that the victims' corpses were similar to the protagonist's brother, with all of them not containing a drop of blood. That poison wasn't common and must be something unique to the 5 poison demons. Additionally, Huck asks about the 5 raised sect. Hwania confirms that they also arrived at the location, and with this, the hero unexpectedly orders his subordinate to guide them to the sect. The boy tries to stop his master, saying the men will conduct an inspection in 2 hours. However, Huck continues on his way, saying that it is more than enough time. There are several people gathered outside the castle. Sleep and fatigue begin to overcome some of them. Far away in the darkness of the night, it is possible to see silhouettes approaching them. Serious and determined, he asks who Makjong is. One of the guards found it insolent for a stranger to inquire about the leader of his sect, and the man states that the leader is one of the 5 venomous demons. The guard does not seem to believe this, while his colleague becomes terrified at the possibility. Assuming it to be a slanderous claim, he orders the others to kill the stranger. The terrified guard runs away as he realizes these strangers know the truth. The man then asks if the guards have any warning instruments like trumpets to sound the alarm. Since their time is limited, it would be good to call everyone there for a coordinated beating. Seeing that there are only 3 of them, the guard becomes even more enraged by the intruder's audacity. However, they are promptly beaten, offering no real danger or resistance. With that, the gates are opened and a horde of extras approaches them, only to be beaten as well. Their advance is halted by the body of one of the guards, which has just fallen from the sky. Seeing more of their companions defeated, they proceed with more caution. What was supposed to remain an absolute secret had already been leaked. The leader knows he now needs to kill all of them, even though he had put so much effort into training them. Furthermore, he wants to capture the invaders alive to discover the source of their information. However, he might not succeed, as his comrades were obliterated in mere seconds. This realization leaves him terrified, knowing he will be unable to do anything. Without even noticing, an attack is already coming down on him, striking his head with a powerful blow. Focused, he places his hand inside one of his sleeves. He retrieves something from it and throws it at his enemy. A small bomb now nearly colliding the fool's face. Several of them are launched, exploding on the unsuspecting. The excruciating pain is merely a distraction as they continue to be beaten. The juice enthusiast can disintegrate bodies with his punches as if he were Thanos himself. He finds the results of his punches quite amusing, while the fools are terrified. One of them, showing some sense, decides to flee. Concentrating aura in his hand, the strongman will not let the coward escape, launching an attack that chases its target, hitting him in the back as he flees. This splits him into 2 nearly identical halves. Meanwhile, the one who seems to be their leader continues being beaten, doing his best to make the beating he's receiving less humiliating. He gains some space from his aggressor. Without his internal energy, he wouldn't have been able to block that attack and would probably be on a one-way trip to find out if God exists. His aggressor acknowledges that Zhang is skilled even if he is the false leader. Then he orders Zhang to attack as it's getting late and he needs to rest. This only infuriates Zhang further. Concentrating his energy, he declares he will now tear him to pieces, unleashing a torrent of annihilation upon him. It's as if multiple tips of his spear are striking the target simultaneously. In this case, all of them miss at the same time. This leaves Zhang completely horrified. Not only did he miss everything, but his enemy had vanished entirely, reappearing before him like a ghost standing atop his spear. And before his image could become clear, attacks are already coming his way, hitting Zhang in specific points. This incapacitates him, preventing him from moving. This makes him demand to know who attacked him, and with fire in one fist, the attacker replies he does not deserve to know the answer, incinerating the fool instantly. Behind him, there is a burning body, unable to move, with several others scattered on the ground. Inside a building, a man begins the roll call, and the woman wants to know when he will return. The door opens, startling her. It's the instructor. Looking at the empty beds, he notices one is occupied and wants to know what this means. Because the idiot above it shouldn't be sleeping, the girl says he is sick. She pushes the instructor away from him, claiming that touching him might also infect him. But if that's true, the instructor says she should have reported it earlier. Then they hear a noise coming from the door. The long-haired one was taking a bath playing dumb and realizes it's roll call time. The girl partially closes her eyes because he is naked. The instructor confirms that the bed contains a straw dummy. He gets upset that she tried to deceive him, and the girl tries to explain herself. But she is dragged by her ear, apologizing to the instructor. The incinerated body remains lifeless on the ground. He devoted his life to creating the 5 lightning sects, and he wants to know who is destroying them like this, as they also know about the poisonous demon. He told his underlings not to appear before him until they discovered who was behind it. Upon receiving the order, they disappeared to investigate. One of the underlings went to the leader but failed to find out who was responsible. For disobeying him, he was grabbed by the throat. He reprimanded him for ignoring his orders, and the underling said there was a new mission. It would be rewarded with 20,000 mang. The condition was to kill the target slowly, without them realizing they were dying, one of the leader's specialties. Hearing about the reward, he wanted to know who the target was, and the underling said it was a student from the Academy of Illusions. This surprised him. The target was Shukranway. In the middle of the forest and among fireflies, a man observed a pile of stones. He approached it to look for something. He found a small piece of paper in the middle. Reading its contents, he felt pleased. Now he was sure they had fallen into his trap. Dawn broke over the temple. In the courtyard, the students continued training. Among them was Hyuk, practicing alongside the others. His movements were precise, and he was highly skilled. Before his sword, he visualized a fool, cutting it down with a single precise strike. The illusion disappeared from his sight. Finishing his movement, he looked to the side. He saw more colleagues practicing as well. Among them was a very talented woman. What surprised him was seeing her use 2 blades. After practicing, she felt relieved that they had finished. In front of her, someone was taking off his shirt, and she told him to stop. She pointed to the scars on his back. He asked if there was something wrong, but she seemed more interested in other matters. She said she was worried about him because the clothes he wore yesterday were stained with blood, but Huck said the blood wasn't his. She threw a pile of folded clothes at him. Indeed, she agreed he wasn't the type to get beaten up in a fight, and Huck was glad because his clothes were clean. Leaping out the window, he said he trusted her to take care of things that day as well. Frustrated, she said he needed to stop running away so often. Tule began to approach. Sitting at the table, he said he was grateful to have been invited once again. The odd one said that for him, it was very entertaining to talk with the young man. But he poured a mysterious powder into the tea, not party powder. Hyuk remained seated, waiting for the hot drink. The odd one said today's tea was very special. Hyuk said the aroma was mild, and the odd one remarked that the aftertaste was intense. He began drinking the tea that had been served to him. The odd one drank alongside him. Placing the empty cup on the table, he asked if the odd one knew the spirit-banishing herb. A little embarrassed, the odd one said he had never heard of it before. Hyuk said it had no effect on its own, but when combined with spiritual root, it could kill in hours. This made it a perfect poison for stealthy assassinations. Hyuk only mentioned it because he thought the odd one liked herbs, but the odd one said his interest was only in flowers. He asked if the tea they were drinking was made with those herbs. This greatly frightened the odd one. Hyuk was certain someone had asked him to kill him. Feigning surprise, he hadn't imagined he would be the target of such a mission. He raised his hand and pulled a cord tied to the ceiling. A sound began to echo, and Hyuk became alert. A massive wooden door started to block the exit. The odd one pulled out a snake from his clothing. It was an instrument that slithered across his forearm. He said his goal was to kill Hyuk painlessly. Firing several darts, perhaps that outcome was now impossible. Hyuk quickly moved his foot. That was enough to lift the table in front of him. It served as a shield to block the darts flying in his direction. The odd one grew increasingly nervous, knowing he had not yet achieved his goal. He attacked the table, splitting it in 2. He did this using a sword, aiming to reach his victim. But there was no one there anymore. Behind the odd one, Hyuk said it was he who had destroyed the 5 lightning sects. With a quick reflex, the odd one tried to slash Hyuk, but all he managed was to have his arm dislocated. Hyuk wanted the odd one to show him his true power. As he was the demon of 5 poisons, the Odd One's hands began to change color as if they were peeling. Since it was he who had destroyed the 5 sects, he would ensure the Odd One had an interesting death. He attacked with the 12 flamingo hands, but none of them managed to hit their target. However, one of them grazed his clothes, causing the fabric to corrode. The Odd One continues attacking with his hands coated in poison. Without hesitation, Cup grabs him with his bare hands. This made the Odd One rejoice as his hands are completely covered in lethal poison. Crushing his hand, Hook demands to know where the poison is. The pain is so immense it forces the Odd One to his knees in agony. With him at his mercy, Hook executes several hand movements. He struck strategic points on the Odd One's body. With him paralyzed, Hook begins to walk around the area. Heading to a cabinet, he finds what he was looking for. He is sure the Odd One would have offered him this as tea, which would have poisoned him. Realizing he had been discovered, the Odd One begins to sweat in fear. Now he understands that this young man is the successor Hyukri-one. Huck states he does not intend to blackmail the Odd One with this information, because to be blackmailed, he would need to remain alive. Not to mention, he might now endure the same pain his brother felt. Pouring spiritual root tea into his mouth, Huck ensures a slow death. The hot tea must be swallowed, otherwise he would drown. The teapot is thrown to the ground, shattering into pieces. Huck leaves the Odd One behind to die in suffering. His friends are already outside waiting for him. In an hour, they will return to check if he is still alive. Being categorical, he told them not to reduce his pain in any way. As he continues on his way, immense anger consumes him. But soon he encounters something unexpected. Someone is approaching him, calling him brother. They said a band of 5 musicians is entering the market and that they should go see them. Seeing this leaves him paralyzed. He notices is just 2 brothers happily interacting. This scene reminds him of his own brother, which ignites even more anger in him, releasing lightning from his hands. He is determined to send the one who killed his brother to hell. Night finally falls over the temple. On tiptoes, the girl walks through the corridors. She does not want anyone to notice her, until she is surprised by someone who says it has been a long time since they last saw her. She turns around to see who it is. The man greets her warmly. Mujo was the leader of the demonic cult, responsible for ensuring its supreme reign. But even he was not immune to the passage of time. With his influence waning, the conflict among the influential grew more intense. Those who sought to restore the orthodoxy of the ancient factions began their preparations. As part of the Divine Traders group, they need to recover the 3 divine treasures, which would reunite the scattered orthodox forces. He said if she needed anything at the academy, she should talk to him, though his help might expose her identity. The young man knows her roommate belongs to the demonic cult. She reassures him it is only her roommate, and the young man says he understands. They part ways now and will only meet again when the plan is ready. He stays there until she leaves. He apologizes to the girl. Looking at the moon that night, he resolves to do everything possible to protect her. As dawn breaks, she wonders what is happening. She feels she's being left behind. She tells her roommate they are being avoided, which she thinks is good since no one will stand in their way, but she remains thoughtful. The members of the demonic cult are displaying hostility, and the Orthodox clan members are too scared to act. Something is happening. The professor calls for attention, and as he teaches them how to use weapons, he wants to see everyone's skills. And now the sparring matches will begin, a rare practice especially for the first class. The professor asks for volunteers, and a student quickly steps forward. Now he can choose his opponent. Without hesitation, he points to the protagonist because he is a bold side character. The girl finds this suspicious. It must be the work of Jojoak manipulating teachers and students. Thus, they prepare to begin the match. Along with the other classmates, she anxiously awaits the outcome of the fight. The student wonders what his opponent might do, but even with his spear in hand, his stance is relaxed, almost pathetic. If he advances quickly, victory will be his as he wields a sword. The professor authorizes the start of the match. This prompts the side character to execute his strategy. The girl ponders what her classmate will do. He waits to react. His opponent is almost upon him, confident the match will end with his first strike, but he soon realizes Huck is no longer in front of him. This forces a quick reaction, as he had been flanked by his opponent without realizing it, who struck him with the back of the spear, a strike powerful enough to make him feel pain. All the students, without exception, were impressed. Even feeling pain, he refused to fall. But since he was no longer reacting, Huck disarmed him. And with his opponent disarmed, he struck him a few more times with the spear, knocking him to the ground. Opening his eyes, the student realized he might lose a few teeth. To everyone's surprise, that nearly fatal blow was aimed at the ground, not the student's face. There was no student who wasn't impressed by that performance. Even the teacher broke out in a cold sweat but deducted points for using unnecessary force after the fight had already ended. The girl didn't like that one bit, but Huck didn't care. He left the spear stuck in the ground and returned to his spot. Telling him to wait, another bold student challenged him to a duel. He turned to him, intrigued by the challenge. The teacher told him to continue practicing, and the girl said it was unfair for him to keep doing repeated matches. But since he was chosen, refusing would result in a deduction of points. The girl said it was just a test of skills, but the teacher kept talking about points. He told her to shut up or she would lose points. This made her furious. She turned her gaze to Huck. Among the available weapons, he still didn't know what to choose this time. He decided that a whip would be the instrument of destruction this time. The The student hesitated, thinking his opponent only handled the spear. Once again, they positioned themselves to start the match. Breaking the ground with a single whip crack, he said he was ready. The teacher authorized the start of the match. The whip was flying through the air with force. He soon managed to tie it around his opponent's leg, pulling him as if he were a caught fish. Now the fool was screaming in fear, unable to control what was happening to his body. Hyuk prepared a singular slap to land on the fool. His face was smashed by the blow, a slap so strong it could humble any police officer. The boy was thrown into the air. Once again, the other students were shocked by what they saw. Hyuk wondered if there was anyone else interested. There were still many weapons he could use. One of them said that this student's arrogance was unbearable. Now it was his turn to face him. Seeing the colossal size of the fool's sword, Hyuk decided to grab a small dagger. He was very happy that someone else came to enjoy the violence. The strong one didn't like Hyuk's smile, thinking he was being mocked. He struck his first blow, missing, but destroying the ground, just like all the strikes he aimed at his opponent. With a single precise slash, Hyuk severed the fool's hand. The pain made him drop his sword, and before it could even hit the ground, Hyuk caught the weapon. He was about to decapitate his classmate. However, he just slapped him, using the flat of the sword instead of the edge. Now another fool was sent flying out of the temple. Once again, the other students were dumbfounded. The teacher, who witnessed it all up close, broke out in a cold sweat. He deducted more points from Hyuk for drawing blood from a classmate. The girl was furious with such arbitrariness and said it was unfair. The teacher even had the audacity to deduct more points for using someone else's weapon. Someone said they were being ridiculous, and the teacher turned to see who had spoken. A young man descended from above to attack, kicking the teacher in the head. One instructor attacked another in front of the students, but the one who struck was many levels above the one who was hit. He didn't have the authority to deduct points, and the foolish instructor said they shouldn't interfere with his methodology. This seemed to awaken something in the experienced instructor. He said he would report an instructor who coerced students with points, instigating them to fight, and he could also report that he was attacked and that someone interfered in his class. Looking at the girl and Hyuk, he said they were too close, their faces disgusted him, and he didn't want to see them together. The girl bowed, saying she would pay attention to this in the future. However, Hyuk remained unfazed and thoughtful. What he couldn't stop observing was the mysterious silhouette on one of the rooftops. From above, this person saw everything that happened in that class. This seemed to have left them irritated. The man continued sipping his tea calmly. Jang Ryan came quickly, having heard about the Phoenix Dragon Society, but wanted to know why it was only the two of them there. The person said they wanted to spend some time alone with him, which was why they hadn't called the others. Besides, Baeklu was also there, and she was the phoenix of their cult. Indeed, Baeklu was a very beautiful woman. However, the girl knew she wasn't there by chance. She was only called because the fool over there has a crush on her. Either way, she knows she has a favor to ask of him. There is a newcomer at the academy who has been causing them trouble. This made him furious as someone is challenging the academy's traditions. All they need to do is tell him who it is and he will make sure to teach them the lesson. This made the effeminate one extremely pleased. The students are gossiping about something. Thanks to the duel, he has become quite famous among his peers. Now people avoid them even more, but Hike loves it as long as they aren't being provoked. However, for the girl, this is terrible since they've been there for years and need to maintain a good reputation. The protagonist only thinks that his brother did nothing to them, and yet he was killed. Being well-liked means nothing. The students are mesmerized by the beauty of a woman. It was Baeklu who caused this, and her companion remarked that men are too predictable. Soon, she encountered Hyuk, who caught her attention. She found him handsome. As he walked past her, the girl watched him even more closely. Her companion said that he is Hyuk, the one who massacred 3 classmates during training. Now she knows he is the troublemaker. She wants to know who the girl accompanying him is. It is his roommate from the Orthodox faction, an odd and unlikely pair. The girl knows it will be difficult for the student to avoid Joak's retaliation, which is a shame because she finds him very handsome. At night, his roommate walks through the courtyard. She whistles as she wanders absent-mindedly. She went to a spot where a note had been left for her. In it says everything has already been completed. The next morning, they want to know what happened. Her clothes were completely torn. Chuck said they were already like that when he saw her, and his roommate begins to fantasize about his naked body. It's almost time for training and he has no clothes, so the girl offers hers. She promised him a peaceful life at the academy and feels responsible for not preventing this from happening. Putting on different clothes, he says it's fine and asks them to leave quickly. But she warns him that if they proceed like this, more points will be deducted. The storage room is completely filthy. Surely that's why they assigned him this task. He raises one of his hands. A gust of wind fills the room. The dust is blown away. He continues using the broom like a fan. Outside, dust begins to flow out of the storage room, and there's no dirt left inside. It was the punishment the professor gave him, and since he finished too quickly, he doesn't know what to do now. Sighing, he begins to consider his options. The person who ordered his brother's assassination must be at this academy. The money given to the venomous demons should still be recorded in the accounts, and Hwania is searching for it. It will take a week for Wusing's absence to be noticed. In that time, he needs to find the source of the funds. The door opens, and he turns around. A mysterious figure has appeared before him. The protagonist looks at them, unsure of who they are. 2 students are tasked with disposing of waste. They don't know why they have to do it, but one of them says this might be the only similar opportunity they'll ever have in life. Ryong asked them to do this, and if they succeed, they might earn favor with an influential person. This could help their families move closer to nobility. That's why they must succeed. Preparing a countdown, they get ready to open the door. When the countdown ends, they open the door, throwing buckets of filth inside, toward Hyuk, who had just finished cleaning the place, but he quickly dodges the attack. This makes one of the fools uneasy, as they should have hit him. The other, still holding a bucket, is struck by the protagonist's broomstick, and now the filth flies through the air, landing on the two foolish students. Seeing them covered in filth, he asks who they are. Without answering, they believe they have achieved their goal. Thus, they flee the scene. This is problematic, and now Hyuk has another issue. The floor is covered in filth. The fools return to those who gave them the order and report what they did to the floor. But they reek, and they admit they tried to dirty Hyuk, but it didn't work. The man just orders them to leave and wash up, because even he can no longer stand the stench. The sound of water begins to flow from the well, until water gushes from it like a fountain. The protagonist moves his hands in the air, and the water follows his command. It moves toward him to clean the mess. Entering the warehouse energetically, there was so much water that it flowed out through the windows. He placed the broom on his shoulders, confident that the cleaning was finished. At the end of the day, the instructor announced that the lesson was over. His roommate approached him, wanting to know how he was, but she found the warehouse completely clean. She asked how he managed to do it, but all he said was that he was tired and they should leave. She had heard of a legendary suction technique and wanted to learn it, but the young man said it was just a myth. She kept insisting, and as they entered the room, there was that stunning woman from earlier, a beauty so unique that even she was impressed. Such appearances were uncommon among people. Her servant introduced her to the students, stating that she was a noble. Without waiting for an introduction, the protagonist asked if they were the ones who messed with his clothes. The servant said they were not that kind of people, but Hyuk insisted that they were in someone else's room. The stunning woman apologized and asked the gatekeeper to open the door because she didn't want to wait in the hallway. It was the first time her servant had seen her apologize to a man. Hyuk then asked what she was doing there. She said she had come to warn him of danger. Destroying his clothes was just the beginning, and he already knew that. Someone capable of manipulating the academy was targeting him now, and it would only end if he surrendered or died. Hearing this, his roommate was frightened. Hyuk, however, said it could also end if the person pursuing him died first. This startled the stunning woman, seeing that he had no fear of Jujaak. She told him there was a safer way to deal with it too. Turning around, she looked at her servant. The servant left the room, taking the other woman with her. With the doors closed, she said her family could protect him. All he had to do was ask her to do it. After they talked, she left the room. The stunning woman was very upset. Now she didn't know what to do, as her offer had been refused. The stunning woman was a little unhinged and now desired the young man even more. A man was walking inside the building. He bowed and asked if the elder was present. Introducing himself, he said he was Nam Jo Yang, one of the 8 demons of the Academy of Illusions. The elder was writing something. His name was Muk Jin, and he wanted to know why the young man was there at that hour. The news was that the 5th evil demon had disappeared. The elder believed he might be away on a mission. If that were the case, he would have left a message, but he left nothing with his servants, making the elder wonder if one of the best assassins had been assassinated. Fortunately, that might be exactly what happened, because it was possible he had betrayed them. This put the elder on high alert. Their lives were tied to the sly tongue of that young man. Because he was useful, they had kept him alive, but now they realized it was a huge risk. Uncertain about the situation, he ordered them to search for him until they were sure of what had happened to him. This led the elder to ask what they should do once they found him. The elder said that every risk must be eliminated. In the city center, there were several merchants. Looking around, she assumed this was the place, until she found the shop she had been looking for. Asking the elder for permission, she said she was looking for someone named Wak Noya. He glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, telling her to follow him. They walked through some alleys and she didn't understand the need for it, so she decided to ask the elder if it was far until they reached their destination. Without answering, he had already turned on her in a hostile manner. She barely managed to dodge the first attack, and the elder was determined to keep attacking. However, she drew her swords to defend herself, successfully parrying the attack. But the elder's eyes were filled with bloodlust. He unleashed a torrent of strikes against her. Even so, the student held her ground bravely, and they both distanced themselves. She said that was the sword technique that pierces the sun from the Blue Horizon sect. The elder had known she used 2 swords, but he hadn't imagined she was so skilled. Bowing, he said it was a pleasure to meet her. Finally, the elder bowed, saying the pleasure was all his. Then he handed her the counterfeit seal, wishing her success in her mission. Determined, she said she would fulfill her mission. Elsewhere, a servant carried some cups of tea, serving them to Hyuk and his friends, who were reading. The waitress was already annoyed with them, as they came there every day and all they ordered was 1 cup of tea. Finally, one of them seems to have found what they were looking for. At the time of the assassination, a large sum of money was transferred. This was the payment, and it is recorded in the financial ledger. A transaction of that size would have required the approval of one of the 8 demons. The strongman seems to have noticed something. It's one of his servants wearing a mask. He asked what they thought of it, and if it looked accurate. Just seeing that face again makes him want to kill him. The strawman had to intervene to save him because of this. Still in the room, his roommate is sitting down. In her lap, there is a small statuette. She remembered the elder's words who asked her to avenge her seniors. Hearing the door open, she realized she needed to stop crying. Hiding her face, she greeted her friend. She told him that the next day there would be news about the class and that they would visit the Hall of the Ascending Dragon. Intrigued, he wanted to know more about this place. It's a large building and the students are already in front of it. Slowly, they begin entering the place. There are several staircases inside. The instructors are already waiting for them. The place is very well decorated. It seems to have a statuette similar to the one his roommate owns. The students observe one of the paintings depicting a battle. This place holds many relics that pique their curiosity. Among them is the Huasan plaque. The Wuding Bagua, also of Sorab's beads, are there, and a massive statue carved after Sorab's defeat. They never imagined they would see it in their lifetime. The purpose of this class is to instill fear in certain sects. A warning to never consider rebellion. The girl looks at someone she knows. He is in this class. Huck finds this class horrifying. If his brother were alive, he would never allow something like this. Looking around, he wonders where the girl has gone. Outside, a man prepares to light a bonfire. He brings his torch close to the kindling he has gathered. As the fire begins, he watches the flames grow. Huck notices that something is wrong. The other students also sense the smell of something burning. An instructor alerts them to the fire, ordering everyone to evacuate the building immediately. Now Huck is worried because his friend has disappeared amidst the chaotic situation. She is already prepared, covering her face with a cloth. On the ground, she is getting ready to jump. She manages to launch herself into the air, reaching a considerable height, higher than the roof of the building, landing lightly on it. Below her is the Divine Seal. Still inside, there is a great commotion to ensure a safe evacuation. One of the instructors wants to know why the others are standing still since there is a fire ongoing. But they have been instructed to guard the place no matter what happens. He says he knows that is their duty. But in incidents like this, they need to prioritize evacuation and initiate a formation. The guards seem to realize he is right. Then he opens a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside, there is a lever. The first movement he makes is to turn it. Only then does he pull the lever. This causes something to happen on the ceiling. As the door closes, he orders the other two to go put out the fire. Finally, the door closes behind him. Looking around the room, he feels a bit apprehensive. The girl has already spotted the statuette. This is her primary objective. Meanwhile, everyone is busy and focused on the ongoing fire. They must stop the fire from spreading at all costs. He used ice with his divine technique. He could extinguish the fire in an instant. But since he has no interest in the building, watching it burn is not a bad thing. Even so, with the evacuation complete, he still hasn't found his friend anywhere. This makes him want to enter the burning building, thinking she might still be inside. To protect himself, he conjures a wind armor. Inside the building, he starts looking for her. This makes him realize that much is already compromised. And more than that, something surprises him. Someone is inside and wants to know why he hasn't evacuated yet. The man grabs him by the arm, ordering him to follow, an obstacle to continuing his search. The girl has some daggers in her hands. She throws them toward the hall. The three land in very specific places. Below her is the unbreakable formation. If she touches something wrong, she'll be trapped inside with no way out. And if they discover her attempt to steal the seal, recovering the 3,000 weapons will become even more difficult. She is so close to succeeding. But one of her daggers becomes dislodged from the wall. This compromises her formation and leaves her hanging. Swinging in the air, she has almost no control over herself, heading toward a spear with a sharp blade. The edge is getting closer and closer to her. This makes her frightened. Needing to act quickly, she threw another dagger. It hit the wall firmly, giving her just enough time to pull the string tied to it, avoiding her face from colliding with the blade. By a hair's breadth, she wasn't scalped. However, one of her daggers fell to the ground. She knows this could trigger the trap. The dagger continues bouncing on the floor. With nothing else to hold onto, she began to fall. Twisting her body in the air, she managed to land lightly. In front of the statuette, all she had to do was swap the real one for the fake one in her hands. With agility, she began to exchange the pieces. At first, everything seemed to go as she had planned. Now she just needed to exit the same way she had entered. The fire hadn't been contained yet. If the second phase of the lockdown is activated, the room will be sealed in an instant. It all depends on the girl now. Looking ahead, someone asked where the student who had been with them a moment ago was. This made him look again at the burning building. Indeed, that's where he had gone. A troublesome girl who said she wouldn't cause any problems, but now she was causing him trouble. Looking up, he noticed something. From the collapsing ceiling, she was falling. This made him jump immediately, heading toward her so she wouldn't hit the ground. Catching her in midair in his arms, still confused, she had no idea why he was inside. Without answering, he forced his way out through the roof, falling into nearby trees. As soon as they escaped, the structure began to collapse completely. The sudden collapse left the girl's ally worried. He didn't know if she had gotten out in time or if he had overdone it with the fire. All he could do was hope the girl had managed to escape. In the young man's arms, she realized he had returned just to save her, which made her feel flattered. Setting her down on the ground, he told her not to get full of herself. In the courtyard, flowers were being watered. The instructors were chatting casually under a sunny sky. Someone said it was thanks to him that the flowers bloomed so vibrantly. After a brief conversation, the instructor bid him farewell. Amidst the flowers, someone in disguise praised his performance. But to the young man, doing that wasn't easy at all. All he wished for was for that tedious act to end soon. He only needed to stay there a little longer, and soon the guards would take the bait. At the palace, the elders were astonished. After being missing, the fifth evil demon had returned. The elder considered the possibility that they hadn't been betrayed yet, because disappearing without leaving any message was very suspicious. He ordered the man to meet with him immediately, and if he found anything suspicious, he was to eliminate it. Still disguised, he continued tending to the plants. The man appeared behind him, saying he had been missing, and the disguised man replied that he had matters to resolve. Without hesitation, the man unleashed a slashing blow with his hand, pruning all the plants around him. He said the other had no permission to act this way without giving explanations and that he was being too arrogant. Standing up, he said he had resolved matters with the young master and needed to handle his own affairs as well. It had been a long time since he had tended the garden, and being tired, he was heading home now, bidding farewell to the man in front of him. After that, he walked away cheerfully, but the man was furious for being ignored. He asked if the blood squad was present, and they said yes. They were just waiting for his orders. They should tell the elder that on that day, the traitor would be executed. But the disguise seemed to have served its purpose, as they had managed to catch a big fish. Carefully, she approached her hand to the bird, but all she got was a peck. Hyuk had already told her it was useless to try. The Black Wind didn't accept food from anyone else, only him. All she wanted was to get closer to the animal, so she became determined to win the bird's trust, and Hyuk told her she was free to try. That day, there would be no curfew, so she wanted to know what they would do. She asked if he would go out drinking, but he said he had someone to meet and it might take a while. For her, that was perfect, as she could deliver the seal in his absence. As he left first, she wished him to be careful, but all of this was part of her plan. She went to her bed to grab something. In her hands was the real seal. In the city, the disguised man kept walking. However, he was being followed everywhere he went, so he entered a house. Finally, another day had come to an end. However, he knows there are 6 people inside and likely many more outside. A shadow begins to rise from the ground. He says he has no time for underlings and demands to see their boss immediately. He tells them to deliver the message that someone is here to meet him. The figure reveals itself, saying there is no need to follow his orders. It doesn't take long for the others to reveal themselves as well. Attacking him, they claim they only follow their master's commands. What they did not expect was that this man was skilled. The effort they exerted wasn't even enough to move him from his spot. One of the figures falls to the ground, unconscious. Even the young man didn't expect it to be this easy. Another one writhes on the floor, a dagger lodged in their head. Then through the doors of the house, their master appears. And he is not alone. Throughout the house, more of these shadows gather. Many of them surround the perimeter. The numerical advantage is clearly theirs. And alongside the man is the elderly leader. Their bait managed to lure in 2 demons, and one of them scolds the disguised man, accusing him of biting the hand that fed him. The man claims he doesn't recall them being his masters. This enrages the man further. The elder notices that this might not be who they think it is, as he doesn't recall him having such intense energy. Looking at the shadows on the ground, he grows even more pensive. This prompts him to ask if he is really Odakwai, much to the enraged man's surprise, who doesn't understand a thing. After all, his specialty lies in the use of poison, not in techniques involving blades. The disguised man begins to smile before them. This makes them uneasy about what they are witnessing. The fool had been deceived by a disguise, leading them all into a trap. Removing the mask, the man asks why it took them so long to notice something so obvious. He admits he's grown tired of pretending. Seeing this, they begin to sweat nervously, until one of the shadows is hurled through the walls, smashing into them. Another shadow passes through the house, leaving a gaping hole in its wake. This makes the 2 look toward that direction, terrified. It was the strongman, the juice enthusiast, who had done it. The protagonist orders Dalchi to secure the entrance, ensuring no one can enter or leave. Determined, Dalchi vows that as long as he is there, no one will escape or enter. He assures the leader he can trust him. The mountain of muscle breaks the door as he steps through it, taking his position outside. It doesn't take long before he begins dealing with the shadows lurking there. Inside, they only hear the sounds of violence. The man wonders where these people even came from. The elder notices something in the young man's aura. It feels familiar somehow. One of the shadows tries to attack Hyuk, but is stopped by one of his servants, forcing the shadow to retreat. Strategically, they close in on the man and the elder. Hyuk states that he needs to get a closer look at them and asks Hwanya to clear the way. Immediately, the warrior launches himself at the enemies, taking down all who resist. The man and the elder can only watch what is unfolding before them. Now the elder begins to realize where he has seen this aura before. It is the aura of the leader of the demonic cult, Hyuk Mujo. If this is true, the elder knows he's in serious trouble. He can only assume the young man is either a direct disciple or a relative. The elder asks about his relation to the current leader, but the man thinks the old man has gone mad. Hyuk states he has no relationship with him. The man becomes convinced there is no way Hyuk could be Mujo's relative. Before he can finish speaking, Hyuk adds that he once called him father. This shocks them, as the elder knows the leader's 2 sons are dead. and he cannot be one of them. Huck seems to disagree that both are dead. The elder recalls that the younger one was, in fact, missing. If they assumed both were dead, they must have planned it. Terrified, the elder reveals that the younger one's killer was Odak. The elder commands him to shut up and say no more. Huck thanks him for his honesty as he now knows who is behind the murder. He extends his hand to take something from his servant. It is a sword, immensely powerful. The elder recognizes it as the Soul Destroyer, a weapon said in legends to be wielded only by the celestial demon. Huck states he retrieved it from Yahello. Hearing this location, the elder nearly suffers a heart attack. For killing his brother, Huck declares he will judge them with the Soul Destroyer. Outside, the weather begins to change. The man said that whether or not he was Mudger's son, he shouldn't underestimate him, and the old man was now certain he was even dumber than he looked. The sword's blade came down upon them, convinced that, as one of the 8 demons, he was someone formidable. But the old man simply told him to shut up and stop spouting nonsense. Huck's eyes glowed with an intense blue light. From the sky, a powerful lightning bolt struck the house. Far away, his friend saw what was happening in the sky. Actually, she saw the falcon and signaled to it, wanting to build a friendship. She noticed the bird land on a house. This made her think her friend might be inside. Approaching the door, she said there was someone inside she knew and wanted to know if she could enter. But the strawman said no one enters or leaves. This made her think he must be a subordinate of Jujak. She soon heard what was coming from inside. Drawing her swords, she said if he didn't come out, she would force her way in. But the strawman was confident she couldn't do it. The girl advanced fiercely with her blades, coming within inches of cutting off the strawman's head. But he parried her blade with his bare hands. Not surprised by this, she took the opportunity to attack with her second sword. This made the strawman hold the first blade with just one hand, pulling the sword toward him, unbalancing the one holding it. Now he just had to wait for her to get close enough to punch her in the face. The blow delivered by the strawman was devastating, but there was no one in front of him anymore. The girl was above him, ready to strike. Having 2 swords really was an advantage for her, until she felt something intense that made her hesitate. She was curious to know what had just happened. Returning to the present, she realized she was in serious trouble. The strawman was now about to attack with an axe. Even so, she managed to avoid the worst by dodging. She had to retreat even further as the strawman kept pressuring her, until she created enough distance to think more clearly. The strawman wielded the axe as if it were a feather duster. He said she was indeed very fast, and she acknowledged that he was miserably strong. After exchanging compliments, the strawman said he wouldn't miss this time. She prepared to react at the right moment, but once again, she felt something different. Chuck was there. She was certain of it. She was shocked to see him standing beside her, asking what she was doing there. Behind him was his other servant as well. She remembered someone was attacking her, and she would likely be hit if she let her guard down. But Het grabbed her by the arm, pulling her into his lap, which made her very, very happy. The blow missed them but came close. Realizing what he had almost done, the strawman was horrified because his leader was there. The other servant kicked him for this, and Huck clarified that the young man was his roommate, though it seemed he didn't know she was a girl. Learning this, the strawman apologized, but the girl also apologized for the misunderstanding. She thought Huck had been captured and imprisoned under Jujak's orders. Just imagining such a scenario seemed absurd to him. A small knife fell to the ground. Huck bent down to pick it up. It was coated with a powerful and likely very expensive poison. They couldn't afford it, so he wanted to know who was funding them. They said they only sought revenge for the humiliation they had endured. He said they were very loyal indeed, and he knew they were the ones who had dirtied the warehouse when he had to clean it. He didn't know what had been promised to them, but he knew they would be discarded, as it would be terrible for a noble to be involved in a homicide. They were merely disposable tools like the dagger he held in his hand. Furious, the fool told him to shut up, snatching the dagger from his hand. He was determined to complete the task assigned to him, but Chuck easily dodged it, landing a precise strike on the fool's arm. This caused him to completely lose control of his arm, dropping the dagger, which embedded itself in the wall. This made him wonder if Huck had always been this skilled. The other fool had fled but was hiding nearby. The Lord greeted someone, saying it had been a long time since they had last met. One wanted to know if the young man's father was in good health, as he was one of the 8 evil demons. The young man had been instructed by his grandfather to seek him out as soon as he entered the academy. This made him realize there must be a favor to ask. All he needed to do was say so, as there was practically nothing he couldn't do within the academy. If that's the case, there's something he wants to ask about one of the students. Climbing the stairs, he is annoyed that the brat is so bossy, and he can only get away with it because of his grandfather's influence. The boy invites Ju to drink with him, who hates the idea of doing that in broad daylight. This is the guard post. If the instructors find out, there will be consequences. Even though he is Doc's grandson, this is way over the top. Atop the wall, one of the guards blows a trumpet. Then a procession of horses passes through the gate. They continue on their path. Some of the riders seem uneasy. Looking at them, Ju couldn't have imagined that this would be the day of departure. The boy confirms it, asking if Ju knows who is at the Honghak branch. For a moment, Ju ponders. On one of the horses are Thuk and his friend. Having a view like that even makes the drink taste better. Completely drunk, the boy asks if Ju agrees with him. But all Ju can think is that there should be a limit to the influence of some families. What they are doing is madness. and the caravan continues onward. Among them is one of the evil demons. Night falls over the village. There are horses outside the inn. Inside, a man's drink runs out. He asks the attendant to bring him more. The waiter approaches to fulfill the request. He brings the drink that was ordered, but someone throws a bone at his face. The person who did it complains that the meat is too tough. Apologizing, the waiter says he will bring a new meal shortly. The other people in the bar are terrified. One of his henchmen says it's just one person. Even though there are 20 people in total, they are all rookies. The bandits plan to ambush them at the inn and leave none alive. The henchman says if that person doesn't want to die, they should disappear immediately. Removing his henchman from the scene, the bandit says he won't let him leave alive. Since he appeared before them without any fear, he can't leave alive, and the man asks what he should have done instead. The bandit orders him to crawl like a dog. If he does, you will be spared. Smiling, the man says that sounds fun. The bandit is intrigued by this reaction, realizing the man is armed. With a single strike, the man forces the bandit into a forced mitosis. The mysterious man manipulates his blades while the body hasn't even hit the ground yet. This makes him smile with joy. Immediately, the other bandits rise to fight, but they are too frightened since their leader has been defeated. The man says that if they knew his name, they would run, so it's better they attack him quickly. A brawl breaks out inside the inn. One man says the instructor should set an example and pitch his own tent. Now he is there, dragging his feet. One of the students wants to know why they haven't departed yet, as they've been ready for an hour, but the instructor is thinking of something else. A messenger informs him that Master 1 will follow later, and that they already have authorization to go ahead. But that's not the message he's waiting for. One yawns as if he's sleepy. He feels as though someone is talking about him. He then orders his carriage to proceed. He travels along the road, illuminated by the moonlight. The carriage wheel rolls over a rock, causing the entire structure to shake a bit. It rolls over another rock. The jolting repeats. He tells the coachman to slow down as there is no need to rush, while thinking that they are pathetic since they are heading straight to their deaths. He gathered all those with the lowest potential who should be easily killed, and not even the instructor will be able to stand against the assassins. Doing a favor for Doc's grandson will surely not go unnoticed. This is his chance to leave the academy and join the core of the demonic sect. Knowing this, he begins to laugh uncontrollably. A water skin sits on the table, stained with blood. A bloody hand reaches for it. The man drinks its contents. A woman enters and asks why there's such a mess. They are assassins, not animal butchers, because that's what the man in the hat looks like, a butcher of people. But he says she is no different, and she finds the comparison vulgar. The truth is, on her way there, she also killed many people. The man wants to know how much blood she has bathed in. Outside the inn, there are bodies. They pile up along the street, scattered everywhere. The woman had wiped out everyone in the village. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.